My parents were Quakers, technically Protestant, but they never tried to indoctrinate us. Ours was a household grounded in science. My father, a respected visual neurophysiologist, used to call himself a Quaker, though he openly admitted he didn't believe in God. He followed the familiar atheist framework, the Big Bang, evolution, and the notion that everything could be explained through reason alone. So I grew up walking that same path through grade school, college, and even medical school, believing that atheism made the most sense. We were taught to see faith as unnecessary, almost primitive. Yet the irony is, being raised with a scientific mind means you're trained to question. And I began to notice something. When people find faith, any faith, they start questioning things they never questioned before. That's exactly what happened to me. Coming to faith as an atheist is a strange, difficult process, something only those who've lived it can really understand. In my experience, every person I've met who embraced Islam reached a point in their life where they cried out for guidance. For me, that moment came when my daughter was diagnosed with a life-threatening condition. I remember praying, awkwardly, desperately, "God, if you're there, I don't know if you are, but if you are, I need your help. Save my daughter, and guide me to the religion most pleasing to you." I promised to follow it. That was the first real prayer of my life. And like many who later found Islam, I discovered that prayer was answered. My daughter recovered. And for the first time, I felt the presence of a creator, real, undeniable. It was deeply unsettling for someone who had always explained everything through the Big Bang and evolution. I started to rethink everything I'd accepted as truth. The more I pondered, the more I realized there was far more that didn't make sense than what did. Take the Big Bang, for example. I remembered how the theory itself evolved over my lifetime. When I was in college, the prevailing view was that everything began from a primordial dust cloud that condensed into a hyperdense core and exploded outward. Later, scientists began asking, where did that dust cloud come from? Then came refinements, theories about expansion and gravity. They said gravity would slow the expansion, eventually pulling everything back together until the universe collapsed into another dense core, triggering another explosion, the so-called Big Crunch. Some even proposed an infinite cycle of explosions and collapses. But I kept asking, where did it begin? What sparked it all? The same questions haunted me about evolution. Natural selection explains diversity, sure, but not the origin of life itself. You can piece together organs, create a perfect body like Frankenstein's creature, but you can't make it live. You can't breathe life into something once that spark is gone. Life, the essence itself, defies explanation. And no theory of evolution has ever truly accounted for it. Some atheists try to sidestep the issue, suggesting life came from outer space, carried here by asteroids or aliens. But that only pushes the question back. Where did they get it? From other aliens? Other asteroids? It's an infinite regression that explains nothing. We can define life, describe its processes, but we can't say where it came from. And that weakens the foundation of every theory built on it. Because a theory is only as sound as its base. When people talk about evolution, I always ask, do you mean biological evolution or chemical evolution? Most look confused. I explain that before there was biology, there had to be chemistry. Before life, there were only elements. Those elements supposedly combined into molecules, then amino acids, then proteins, forming the building blocks of life. That's chemical evolution. Yet, despite countless experiments, no one has ever shown how that leap could actually happen. The famous Miller-Urey experiment, which once seemed to prove it, has since been disproven. The gases they used didn't even match those of early Earth. And when modern scientists repeated the experiment with accurate conditions, it failed. Ironically, Harold Urey himself, a Nobel laureate and friend of my family, was a deeply religious man. He used to say, "I've never met a scientist of any real worth who wasn't religious." So when I think about evolution or any scientific theory, I always come back to foundations. You wouldn't buy a skyscraper without inspecting the ground it stands on. You don't start with the penthouse, you start with the soil beneath it. And that's what I realized. The ultimate foundation is the question of origin. Where did it all come from? Now, I follow a faith fully compatible with the Big Bang. The idea that the universe expanded from a single point is actually described in our scripture. What I reject is the claim that it all happened spontaneously. Science tells us matter and energy can arise from nothing. They can change forms, yes, but they cannot appear out of thin air. That's the first law of thermodynamics. So claiming the universe came from nothing violates that law entirely. Then there's the second law, entropy, the principle that all systems tend toward disorder unless controlled by an external force. Whether it's a chemical reaction, your kitchen sink, or your teenager's bedroom, without effort, things fall apart. Order requires energy. Yet somehow, the Big Bang, supposedly the most chaotic explosion imaginable, produced a perfectly balanced universe. A universe where every constant is so finely tuned that the slightest variation would make life impossible. If Earth were just a little closer to the sun, we'd burn. A little farther, we'd freeze. If the moon's orbit shifted slightly, tides, climate, and balance would collapse. And these are only the simple examples. The deeper ones are even more exacting. So how could an explosion lead not to chaos, but to precision, to harmony? When scientists are confronted with this paradox, they simply say the laws didn't apply yet, that they came into play after the Big Bang. To me, that's not science. That's an evasion. If everything tends toward disorder unless directed by a greater power, what sustains the universe's order now? What holds it together? It has to be a greater power, a creator. Every religion on earth, whether monotheistic or polytheistic, shares that one belief. There is a creator of the world. Some call him the supreme deity among many, others the one and only God. But they all agree, creation has a source. Jews, Christians, Muslims, we all affirm that. And after years of searching, of studying Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and others, I finally found the truth that made sense to both my reason and my heart. I became a Muslim.